Right in the heart of West Africa, there's a story etched into the very coastline. A story of fierce warriors and human tragedy, of brutal dictatorships, and believe it or not, groundbreaking democracy. It's a nation of deep, deep paradoxes, one that's constantly grappling with the ghosts of its past to try and forge a new future. This is the story of Benin.
So, to really get what Benin is all about, you've got to go back in time. Long before any colonial maps were drawn, this land was home to a kingdom so disciplined, so formidable, that European observers could only compare it to the legends of ancient Greece. They called it Black Sparta. So, what in the world could forge such a powerful and feared warrior state?
Well, our story really gets going back in the 17th century with the rise of the Kingdom of Dahomey. And look, this wasn't just some loose collection of tribes. It was a machine of a state, highly centralized, ruthlessly efficient, and built on two main pillars: absolute authority and military conquest.
And at the very core of Dahomey's military might was something the world had, well, rarely ever seen: an elite, all-female corps of soldiers. They were known as the Mino, which means our mothers, and they were the kingdom's most feared warriors, the king's personal bodyguards, and the unforgiving front line of his entire army.
But this incredible military machine served a truly devastating purpose. You see, the kingdom's whole economy, its wealth, its power, it was all fueled by the transatlantic slave trade. The spoils of their conquests, men, women, and children, were sold as human cargo to European traders. This brutal business transformed the region into a place known by a single infamous name: the Slave Coast.
It's honestly hard to wrap your head around the scale of this. At its peak in the 1780s, more than 100,000 people were captured and exported from this coast every single decade. This wasn't just trade. It was a horrifyingly efficient industrial-scale pipeline of human lives that financed the kingdom's entire existence.
But the world was starting to change. As global powers began to outlaw the slave trade, the economic lifeblood of Dahomey just started to dry up. By the 1860s, the number of people being exported had plummeted. The kingdom's very foundation was cracking, just as a new, powerful force was arriving on its shores.
The late 19th century brought the scramble for Africa. European powers were carving up the continent, and the independent Kingdom of Dahomey's days were numbered. And this kicked off a new, violent, and incredibly turbulent chapter: the era of French colonial rule and the decades of chaos that would follow.
Just look at this timeline. It really captures the sheer political whiplash of the 20th century. In 1894, the French conquest ends the kingdom. By 1960, the nation gets its hard-won independence, only to be plunged into 12 years of revolving-door governments and military coups, which all leads to this dramatic ideological pivot in 1972.
So this guy, Lieutenant Colonel Mathieu Carriacou, he takes over and completely remakes the nation. It's now called the People's Republic of Benin, and it becomes this rigid, one-party Marxist-Leninist state. The government seizes the economy, any voice of dissent is brutally silenced, and the country just turns inward, becoming more and more isolated from the rest of the world.
But, by the late 1980s, this whole experiment, it had totally failed. The state was bankrupt, so broke it couldn't even pay its own soldiers. The streets erupted in protest, with people demanding change. All this pressure would force a complete U-turn, sparking one of the most remarkable political transformations in modern African history.
Mathieu Carriacou, the same military dictator who had seized power, actually agreed to hold a multi-party election. And when the results came in, he lost. And then he did something almost unheard of on the continent at the time. He peacefully stepped down. He became the very first mainland African president to be voted out of office and willingly hand over power.
The nation was reborn, changing its name one last time to the Republic of Benin. And for decades, it was hailed as this beacon of stability, a real model of democratic progress in a pretty turbulent region. But what's become of this nation forged in so much fire and contrast?
Well, modern Benin is a complex mosaic of people, faiths, and economic realities. It's a nation still deeply shaped by the echoes of its long and dramatic history.
Today, it's home to an estimated 13.7 million people, and the vast majority of them live right along the southern coast, near the economic hub of Cotonou.
And this population is an incredible tapestry of cultures. While the Fon people, who are the direct descendants of the Dahomey Kingdom, are the largest group, they live alongside more than 40 other distinct ethnic groups, like the Aja, Yoruba, and Bariba, and each one has its own unique language, music, and traditions.
This diversity extends to faith, too. While Christianity and Islam are the most common, nearly 1 in 5 people still practice traditional faiths. And get this? Benin is the birthplace of Vodun, or voodoo, a spiritual practice that is still a powerful, living part of the national identity.
So when you look at the economy, it really hinges on agriculture. Cotton and palm oil are huge exports, and its strategic port in Cotonou acts as a vital gateway for its landlocked neighbors like Niger and Burkina Faso. But of course, that's not the whole story. Beneath the surface, deep challenges persist. Poverty is still widespread, and more alarmingly, those celebrated democratic ideals from 1991, they're now under threat. In just the last few years, international observers have warned of a significant erosion of political freedoms and the silencing of opposition voices.
But to really understand where Benin is headed, we have to look at a recent, powerful event that ties its past, present, and future all together. It's a story of profound loss, and an even more profound reclamation. You see, during that violent French conquest in the 1890s, the royal palaces were ransacked. Their most sacred treasures were stolen and shipped thousands of miles away to museums in Europe. For over a century, a piece of the nation's very soul was missing. And then, after years and years of painstaking negotiation, they came home.
26 royal artifacts. We're talking thrones, statues, and sacred objects that once belonged to the kings of Dahomey. In 2022, they were officially returned by France.
And you have to understand, these are not just art objects. To the people of Benin, they are living links to their ancestors. They represent a stolen history, a spiritual lineage, a cultural narrative that was silenced for generations. Their return is this monumental act of restitution, a chance to finally reconnect with a past that was so violently interrupted.
And so, that's where we're left. As Benin confronts all the challenges of the 21st century, these returned treasures now sit at the very heart of its national identity. After more than a century of silence in foreign museums, they are finally home. The question that remains, for a nation still forging its path, is what stories will they tell now?